I arrived at the seaside mansion I purchased for my parents' 50th anniversary, expecting celebration. Instead, I found my mother Janet sobbing on the front porch, Father Harold trembling with rage, while Sister Amanda's husband Derek stood in the doorway shouting, "This is my house, get out!" Amanda laughed cruelly from behind him. Their 3 children ran wild through the pristine home I saved 2 years to buy. When I stepped out of my car, the laughter died instantly. Derek's face drained of color. The reckoning had arrived. My name is Coco, and I never imagined the most generous gift of my life would turn into the most devastating betrayal I'd ever witnessed. For 24 months, I lived like a monk, saving every single penny from my marketing executive salary. No vacations, no designer clothes, no expensive dinners. Every dollar went toward one dream, buying my parents the retirement home they deserved, but could never afford. Harold and Janet raised Amanda and me on factory wages and diner tips. Dad worked the night shift at the steel plant, while Mom served breakfast at Murphy's Cafe before dawn. They never complained, never made us feel guilty about the sacrifices. When college acceptance letters arrived, they somehow found the money for tuition books and dormitory fees. While other parents planned retirement, mine planned our futures. The Ocean View estate sat majestically on 3 acres of pristine Connecticut coastline. $965,000 for 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Long Island Sound. I imagined Mom watching sunrise from the wraparound deck while Dad fished from their private dock. After decades of basement apartments and cramped rentals, they would finally have space to breathe. I planned to arrive 3 hours before the anniversary party to hang streamers and prepare their favorite foods. The surprise would be perfect family and friends gathering to celebrate 50 years of marriage in their new, forever home. Instead, I discovered my parents sitting on the front steps like homeless strangers, my mother's mascara streaked down her cheeks in black rivers. What happened here? I demanded, rushing toward them with my arms full of decorations and gift bags. "Amanda called this morning," Dad explained through clenched teeth. "Said you gave her the house keys for safekeeping until the party started. When we arrived to set up, Derek wouldn't let us inside our own gift." Mom wiped her nose with a crumpled tissue. "I tried explaining we were supposed to be decorating, but that man just kept yelling about property rights and legal documents. He scared me so badly, Coco. I've never seen such anger in someone's eyes." My stomach dropped as pieces clicked into place. Amanda had been unusually interested in my social media lately, asking detailed questions about my work trips and weekend plans. She'd casually mentioned seeing real estate photos on my phone during Thanksgiving dinner. I'd assumed she was making conversation, not gathering intelligence. "Where is Amanda now?" I asked, already knowing the answer would infuriate me. "Inside," Harold said bitterly, acting like she owns the place. I marched up the limestone walkway I'd admired during countless property visits. Through the bay windows, I could see Amanda's twin boys jumping on the white leather sectional I'd carefully selected. Her daughter was drawing on the hardwood floors with permanent markers, while Amanda scrolled through her phone, completely unbothered by the destruction. Derek opened the door before I could knock his massive frame filling the entrance. "Well, well. Look who decided to show up to her own family's party. We've been expecting you, sister-in-law." "Get out of my house immediately," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Your house—" Amanda appeared behind Derek, laughing with genuine amusement. "Oh, honey, that's adorable. Derek, show her the paperwork." Derek pulled folded documents from his back pocket with theatrical flair. "Your sister here has been very generous. These text messages clearly show you promised Amanda the house due to her financial struggles with 3 children. And this here is a legal transfer agreement you signed last month." I studied the papers, recognizing my phone number but not the messages. The signature looked remarkably similar to mine, but I'd never seen these documents before in my life. "These are completely fabricated." "Prove it," Amanda challenged, crossing her arms smugly. Good luck explaining to a judge why you'd buy $1 million house just to give it away. Makes perfect sense that you'd want your struggling sister and her babies to have a stable home instead of keeping it all for yourself. My mind raced as I realized the scope of their deception. This wasn't spontaneous greed. This was a calculated scheme months in the making. How long have you been planning this? Planning what? Amanda's innocent expression was masterful. You offered us the house, sweetie. Remember, during that phone call 6 weeks ago when Derek lost his job, you said family should help family during difficult times. Don't tell me you're having second thoughts just because Mom and Dad got confused about the arrangements. Derek stepped closer and I could smell beer on his breath despite the early afternoon hour. I've already contacted my lawyer about adverse possession rights. We've been living here for weeks while you were traveling for work. Funny how you never mentioned that to anyone, huh? Makes it look like you abandoned the property. The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had they stolen my gift to our parents, but they'd constructed an elaborate legal justification for their theft. Amanda's smirk told me she believed her plan was foolproof. Show me proof you've been living here for weeks, I demanded. Amanda gestured toward the destroyed interior. Evidence is everywhere, sweetie. Kids' toys, our furniture, family photos on the mantle, even changed the mailing address with the post office. This is our legal residence now, and the law protects homeowners from harassment. My heart hammered as I realized how deep their betrayal went. They hadn't just stolen a house, they'd stolen my parents' dignity, their golden anniversary celebration, and 2 years of my financial sacrifice. But Amanda's confidence would be her downfall because she had no idea how prepared I'd become for exactly this scenario. I want to see every inch of what you've done to my property, I announced, pushing past Derek despite his attempts to block my path. The scene inside was worse than I'd imagined. Amanda's family had moved in, completely transforming my carefully chosen sanctuary into a chaotic disaster zone. The pristine white walls were smudged with fingerprints and crayon marks. The imported Italian tile in the foyer was cracked where someone had dropped heavy furniture. The crystal chandelier I'd saved 3 months to afford hung crooked, missing several decorative pieces that lay shattered on the floor below. Careful where you step, Amanda warned with fake concern. The kids have been having such a wonderful time playing in their new home. Children need space to express themselves, you know. Something you wouldn't understand since you chose career over family. Her 8-year-old son, Brandon, was using a kitchen knife to carve his initials into the custom mahogany dining table. 6-year-old Tyler had discovered the master bathroom and was flooding the marble floors with bubble bath. 4-year-old Madison was systematically removing books from the built-in library shelves and ripping out pages to make paper airplanes. Stop them, I demanded, watching Madison destroy a first-edition cookbook I'd found at an estate sale. Kids will be kids. Derek shrugged, opening the refrigerator and pulling out a beer from a case I certainly hadn't purchased. Besides, this is their house now. They should feel comfortable expressing themselves however they want. Amanda led me to the kitchen island where manila folders were spread across the granite countertop. Since you seem confused about our arrangement, let me refresh your memory with some documentation. She handed me a lease agreement with my signature at the bottom dated 6 months earlier. According to the terms, I was charging Amanda and Derek exactly $1 per month in rent, with an option to purchase the property for $10 after 1 year of occupancy. This is completely fake, I said, examining the document more closely. I never signed this, and I certainly never agreed to rent my parents' anniversary gift to you for practically nothing. Memory problems run in families, Amanda said sympathetically. Remember how Grandma started forgetting things toward the end. Maybe stress from your demanding job is affecting your recollection of events. The comparison to our deceased grandmother was particularly cruel, since Amanda had manipulated her during her final months as well. Don't you dare bring Grandma into this. We all remember how you convinced her to sign over her jewelry collection because you claimed she promised it to you. Grandma wanted her precious jewelry to go to the granddaughter who visited her regularly and cared about her well-being. Amanda replied smoothly. Not the one who was too busy traveling for work to attend family dinners or holiday gatherings. Derek joined the conversation, waving another set of papers. Speaking of family history, your sister here has been very educational about your spending habits. Apparently, you still owe $200,000 on this house, which means the mortgage payments are pretty steep for someone with your income level. He showed me fake bank statements suggesting I'd only made a down payment on the property with massive monthly payments stretching 25 years into the future. Amanda figured you bought this place as an investment property, planning to rent it out to cover the mortgage. Makes perfect sense that you'd want reliable tenants like family members instead of strangers. I stared at the fabricated documents, amazed by their attention to detail. Someone had spent considerable time and effort creating these elaborate fictions. Who helped you forge all of this? Forge. Amanda gasped, pressing her hand to her chest in mock offense. Coco, sweetie, accusing your own sister of document fraud is a serious allegation, especially when you're the one who seems to be suffering from selective memory loss about your own financial decisions. Derek's phone buzzed and he answered with a grin. Yeah, she's here now. Uh-huh. Right, just like you predicted. Okay, we'll be ready. He hung up and turned to Amanda. Lawyer says to document everything she says. Apparently, family members trying to back out of property agreements often claim mental confusion or coercion later. The implication was clear they'd consulted with an attorney and felt confident their scheme would hold up under legal scrutiny. Amanda's preparation was more thorough than I'd anticipated, but her overconfidence was about to become a liability. There's something else you should know. Amanda continued pulling out her phone to show me a text conversation. I've been keeping Mom and Dad updated about your generous offer to let us stay here. They were so proud of your compassion for family members going through financial difficulties. The text messages, apparently from me, discussed how successful people have an obligation to help struggling relatives. According to these fabricated conversations, I'd specifically mentioned wanting Amanda's children to grow up in a stable, beautiful home instead of constantly moving between rental apartments. Our parents think this whole arrangement was your idea, Derek added. Imagine how confused and hurt they'll be when you try to claim you never intended for us to live here. Makes you look pretty unstable, doesn't it? My parents' confused expressions when I'd found them locked out suddenly made sense. Amanda had been poisoning them against me for months, making them believe I was the kind of person who would promise family members a home and then change my mind on a whim. How long have you been planning this? I asked, though I suspected the answer would be devastating. Amanda smiled sweetly. Planning what exactly? You're the one who made the offer. Remember, all we did was accept your generosity and try to make the best life possible for our children in the beautiful home you provided. But Derek's expression had shifted slightly, and I caught a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Actually, babe, maybe we should tell her about the other thing. What other thing? Amanda snapped, clearly annoyed by Derek's departure from their script. Derek looked uncomfortable now, realizing he'd said too much. You know about the job situation and why we really needed the house arrangement to work out. Amanda's face flushed red. Derek, shut up. What job situation? I pressed, sensing an opportunity to unravel their story. Derek glanced at Amanda nervously before continuing. Well, the thing is, I wasn't exactly laid off like we told everyone. I got fired for borrowing some money from the company accounts. Nothing major, just a cash flow issue, but they made a big deal about it and threatened to press charges. You were embezzling? I asked, the pieces clicking into place. Borrowing? Derek corrected quickly. I was planning to pay it all back once my commission checks came in, but the accounting department found the discrepancies before I could replace the funds. Totally unfair since I made that company millions in sales over the years. Amanda grabbed Derek's arm hard enough to make him wince. You're talking too much. She's going to find out eventually, Derek said defensively. Besides, this whole setup makes us judgment-proof. If the company wins their lawsuit, they can't take a house that belongs to her sister. Pretty smart legal strategy, actually. The full scope of their scheme was becoming clear. They hadn't just stolen my gift to our parents. They'd stolen it specifically to hide assets from Derek's potential criminal prosecution. The house wasn't their new home. It was their legal shelter from the consequences of his crimes. So, you're not actually struggling financially, I said slowly. You're hiding from embezzlement charges. That's a very uncharitable way to describe a family helping each other during a difficult legal situation, Amanda replied coldly. But then again, you always were judgmental about other people's problems. Derek's phone rang again, and this time his face went white when he saw the caller ID. It's the company's lawyer, he whispered to Amanda. Don't answer it, she hissed back. We talked about this. But I'd heard enough to understand their true desperation. They weren't confident criminals. They were panicked amateurs in way over their heads. And that panic was about to make them very, very careless with their elaborate deception. You need to understand something about your sister. Derek said, his earlier confidence cracking as Amanda paced frantically around the kitchen. She's been working on this plan for months, ever since she figured out you were buying property. Amanda whirled around, fury blazing in her eyes. Derek, I swear to God, if you say one more word. She's going to find out anyway, Derek shouted back. Besides, you said family should stick together, right? Well, maybe it's time for some honesty about what we've been doing. I leaned against the granite countertop, trying to process the magnitude of their betrayal. What exactly have you been doing? Derek glanced nervously at Amanda before continuing. Your sister's been visiting your parents twice a week for the past 4 months, telling them stories about how successful you've become and how you've forgotten about your humble beginnings. That's not what I said, Amanda protested weakly. Yes, it is, Derek insisted. You told them Coco was flaunting her wealth with expensive vacations and designer clothes, while her own sister struggled to feed 3 children. You showed them fake photos of you supposedly living in some run-down apartment complex. My heart sank as I realized how systematically Amanda had manipulated our parents' perception of me. What fake photos? Amanda remained silent, but Derek pulled out his phone and scrolled through his camera roll. These ones. She took pictures inside her friend Kelly's old apartment before Kelly moved out, made it look like they were living in poverty. The photos showed a depressing studio apartment with peeling paint, broken fixtures, and furniture that looked like it came from roadside garbage. But this isn't where you live, I said, confused. No, Derek admitted. We've got a pretty nice 3-bedroom house in Westford. Mortgage is current, cars are paid off, kids go to good schools. Amanda just wanted your parents to believe we were desperate, so they'd pressure you to help us out. The manipulation was even more calculated than I'd imagined. Amanda hadn't just stolen my gift, she'd spent months poisoning our parents against me to justify her theft. Why would you do this to Mom and Dad? Because they needed to understand the reality of the situation, Amanda said defensively. You make 6 figures a year, Coco. I'm a part-time dental hygienist married to a man who might go to prison. Family should help family during difficult times. So you decided to help yourself to my parents' anniversary gift. I decided to accept the generous offer you made during that phone call 6 weeks ago, Amanda corrected. The one where you said you felt guilty about your success while your sister struggled with 3 children and a husband facing legal troubles. That phone call never happened. Derek held up his phone again, showing me a contact entry for my number with dozens of recent calls logged. Amanda's been calling your number every few days for months. Sometimes you answer, sometimes you don't. But there's definitely been communication between you two. I grabbed the phone and studied the call log, recognizing my number, but not remembering any of these conversations. I never spoke to Amanda on these dates. Memory problems, Amanda said sympathetically. Like I mentioned earlier, stress can really affect someone's ability to recall important conversations, especially when you're working 70-hour weeks and traveling constantly for business. But something about the call log bothered me, and I studied it more carefully. The conversations were always brief, lasting only 2 or 3 minutes each. If we were discussing something as major as giving you a $965,000 house, wouldn't our conversations be longer than 3 minutes? You were always in a hurry. Amanda explained quickly, racing between meetings, catching flights, dealing with clients. Very brief business-like conversations about family arrangements. Derek's expression had changed again, and I could tell he was becoming uncomfortable with Amanda's increasingly elaborate explanations. Actually, babe, maybe we should mention the other relatives. What other relatives? I asked, dreading the answer. Amanda shot Derek a warning look, but he continued anyway. Your sister's been pretty busy these past few months. Turns out a lot of family members have been willing to help us out during our difficult time. What kind of help? Well, Cousin Patricia loaned us $15,000 for legal fees, Derek explained. And Aunt Susan co-signed a lease on some rental furniture when we needed to stage the house properly. Uncle Robert let us use his address for some credit applications when our own address was temporarily problematic. I felt sick as I realized the extent of Amanda's manipulation. She's been scamming the entire family. Accepting help from caring relatives, Amanda corrected firmly. Everyone understood we were going through a rough patch and wanted to support us however they could. Did you tell them the truth about why you needed the money? I told them Derek was facing some temporary legal difficulties due to a misunderstanding with his former employer, Amanda said defensively. Family doesn't need to know every detail about private business matters. Derek laughed bitterly. Private business matters, Amanda. You told Patricia that Derek was being sued for medical bills from when Madison broke her arm. You told Susan we needed furniture because our apartment got flooded. You told Robert... Shut up, Derek. Amanda screamed, her careful composure finally cracking. You're ruining everything. Everything's already ruined, Derek shouted back. The lawyer says the embezzlement charges are definitely happening. The company found all the missing money and they've got documentation proving I took it. We're looking at felony theft charges, Amanda. This stupid house scheme isn't going to protect us from anything. Amanda's face had gone completely white, and for the first time since I'd arrived, she looked genuinely frightened. That's not what you told me last month. I lied. Okay, Derek admitted miserably. I didn't want you to panic, but the situation is way worse than I let on. I took almost $50,000 over 8 months, and they've got security camera footage of me accessing the accounts after hours. We're completely screwed. The room fell silent except for the sound of Amanda's children destroying my house in the background. I studied my sister's face, watching her process, the realization that her elaborate scheme was built on lies within lies within lies. How much of this did you know? I asked quietly. Amanda slumped into one of the dining chairs, suddenly looking much older than her 32 years. I knew Derek was in trouble, but he said it was just a civil matter. Employee disputes happen all the time, and companies usually settle out of court to avoid bad publicity. So you decided to steal our parents' anniversary gift based on Derek's lies about his legal situation. I didn't steal anything, Amanda said weakly. I was trying to protect my family, my children. Do you have any idea what it's like to worry about your kids losing their home because of your husband's mistakes? Then why didn't you ask for help honestly instead of creating this elaborate fraud? Amanda's laugh was bitter and defeated. Because I knew what you'd say. You'd want to know every detail about Derek's problems. You'd probably insist he turn himself in and cooperate with prosecutors. You'd make us jump through hoops to prove we deserved assistance. So instead, you decided to forge documents and manipulate our parents. I decided to take what should have been offered freely between sisters. Amanda replied, some of her defiance returning. Family should help family without conditions or judgment. You have more money than you know what to do with, and I have 3 children to protect. But even as she spoke, I could see the doubt creeping into her expression. Derek's admission about the severity of his legal troubles had undermined her justification for everything they'd done. The house wouldn't protect them from criminal charges, and their family relationships were now permanently damaged by months of systematic deception. There's something else, Derek said quietly, and Amanda's head snapped up in alarm. Derek, no. She needs to know, Derek insisted. This isn't our first time doing something like this. My blood ran cold as I realized their betrayal might be even deeper than I'd imagined. "What do you mean?" Derek avoided Amanda's furious glare and looked directly at me. "We've done this before. Different state, different family, same basic plan. Amanda's really good at finding vulnerable targets and figuring out their weaknesses." The floor seemed to shift beneath my feet as I processed his words. "You're career criminals." "We're survivors," Amanda said coldly, her mask finally slipping completely away. "People like you have everything handed to them, while people like us struggle to get by. Sometimes you have to take what should have been shared willingly." "How many families have you done this to?" Derek and Amanda exchanged a long look, and I could see them calculating whether honesty or continued deception would serve them better. Finally, Derek spoke. "3 others, maybe 4, depending on how you count the situation with Amanda's ex-husband's parents." I stared at my sister, trying to reconcile the woman I'd grown up with to the calculating predator sitting across from me. "Who are you?" "I'm someone who refuses to let her children suffer, because society favors people like you over people like us," Amanda replied without a trace of shame. "I'm a mother who will do whatever it takes to provide for her family, even if privileged people like you can't understand the sacrifices that requires." But her bravado couldn't hide the fear in her eyes, because we both knew their carefully constructed house of lies was finally collapsing around them, and the reckoning I'd promised was just beginning. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app, watching Amanda's eyes widen as she realized I'd been documenting our entire conversation. "You might want to hear what I discovered about your operation before you say anything else incriminating." "You can't record us without permission," Derek protested, reaching for my phone. "Actually, Connecticut is a one-party consent state for audio recordings," I replied calmly. "And since I'm one of the parties to this conversation, I can legally record anything you choose to say in my presence." Amanda's face had drained of color, but she tried to maintain her defiant posture. "Whatever you think you've discovered, you're wrong. This is exactly what it appears to be, a family arrangement that you're trying to back out of because you've changed your mind." I smiled, pulling up the email folder I'd been building for 3 weeks. "Let me share some interesting findings from my private investigator. Yes, Amanda, I hired professional help the moment I became suspicious of your behavior." Derek dropped into the nearest chair as if his legs had given out. "Oh, God." "Marcus Fitzgerald is one of the best fraud investigators in New England." I continued scrolling through his detailed reports. "Former FBI agent, specializes in family financial crimes, very thorough documentation. Want to know what he found?" Amanda remained silent, but her hands were trembling as she gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. "Let's start with Derek's embezzlement charges. $52,437 stolen over 8 months from Consolidated Marketing Solutions in Hartford. Security footage shows you accessing the client escrow accounts on 17 different occasions after normal business hours." Derek put his head in his hands. "How did you—" "Marcus has contacts throughout the legal community," I explained. "Turns out your case isn't as confidential as you believed. Prosecutors are planning to file charges next week, and they're considering upgrading to organized theft conspiracy based on evidence of planning and premeditation." Amanda finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of evidence?" I pulled up another email attachment showing printed screenshots of text messages between Amanda and Derek. These conversations about finding a judgment-proof living situation date back 6 months, long before Derek claimed he was fired and definitely before I supposedly offered you this house. The text messages revealed their entire strategy in detail. Amanda had researched adverse possession laws while Derek mapped my travel schedule through social media. They'd planned to claim squatters' rights while I was out of state for extended business trips, counting on legal delays to give them months of free housing while Derek's criminal case played out. But here's my favorite discovery. I continued opening a thick file labeled Prior Fraud Activity. Marcus found your previous victims, the Hendersons in Vermont, the Kowalskis in New Hampshire, and the Garcias in western Massachusetts. Remarkably similar patterns in all 3 cases. Derek's head shot up. You said you'd covered our tracks better than that. I thought I had, Amanda replied numbly. Different names, different stories, different approaches each time. Same basic method, though. I said, reading from Marcus's report. Identify vulnerable families during emotional milestones like anniversaries, graduations, or medical emergencies. Establish fake financial hardships to justify requests for help. Forge documents when initial manipulation fails. Escalate to property crimes when victims become suspicious. I handed Amanda a printed photograph showing her and Derek outside a farmhouse in rural Vermont. The Hendersons were celebrating their daughter's college graduation when you convinced them their son-in-law needed temporary housing due to fake job troubles. Sound familiar? Amanda stared at the photo without speaking, but Derek was falling apart completely. We were supposed to be smarter this time. You said family members never call the police on each other. I also said you needed to stick to the story we practiced, Amanda snapped. But you couldn't stop talking about details that didn't matter. Details like the other families you've defrauded, I asked, or details like the mail theft Marcus discovered. Both of them froze, and I knew I'd hit the center of their operation. Oh yes, Amanda, we know about the mail theft. 6 months of intercepted Social Security checks from Mom and Dad's address. Forged signatures on pension fund distributions. Derek even opened fake accounts using their personal information to hide the stolen money. I showed them bank statements Marcus had obtained through his law enforcement contacts. $18,700 in stolen retirement income from 2 elderly people who trusted their daughter completely. Amanda's careful composure finally shattered, and she began sobbing with genuine anguish. They weren't supposed to know about that part. The house was supposed to fix everything before anyone found out about the missing money. Fix everything, I demanded. You were stealing their retirement income while pretending to be the caring daughter who visited regularly. How exactly does stealing this house fix financial elder abuse? The plan was to pay everything back once we got settled, Derek said desperately. Amanda figured if we could live rent-free for a year or 2, we could save enough money to replace what we borrowed from your parents. Borrowed, I repeated incredulously. You forged their signatures on government checks. That's federal mail fraud and identity theft, not borrowing. Amanda wiped her eyes, smearing makeup across her cheeks. I was protecting my children's future. Do you understand what happens to families when the father goes to prison? We'd lose everything, the house, the cars, the kids' college funds. I wasn't going to let my babies suffer because Derek made some bad financial decisions. So you decided to make your children accessories to multiple felonies instead. The accusation hit home and Amanda flinched as if I'd slapped her. My children don't know anything about the business arrangements. Business arrangements. I pulled up another folder on my phone showing photographs of Amanda's children helping Derek move stolen furniture into my house. Marcus has documented evidence of your kids participating in property crimes. Child Protective Services will be very interested in these photos. Derek stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You can't involve the children in this. They're innocent. Then you should have thought about that before you made them help you steal furniture from my house to stage your fake living situation. I showed them additional photos Marcus had taken of Derek and the children loading my custom furniture into a rental truck, along with time-stamped evidence proving they'd stolen nearly $15,000 worth of furnishings and appliances over the past month. Where did you think I was during your extended occupation of this house? I asked. I wasn't traveling for business, Amanda. I was staying in a hotel 40 minutes away while Marcus documented every crime you committed. The blood drained from Amanda's face as she realized the full scope of my preparation. You've been watching us for weeks. 3 weeks and 2 days, I confirmed. Long enough to document mail theft property crimes, fraud and identity theft. Long enough to track down your previous victims and coordinate with prosecutors in multiple states. Long enough to ensure that when the hammer finally dropped, you'd have nowhere to run. Derek was pacing frantically now, his earlier confidence completely gone. This is insane. We're family. Families don't destroy each other over misunderstandings like this. Misunderstandings, I repeated. Derek, you've committed federal crimes using my parents' identities. Amanda has systematically defrauded multiple families across New England. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is organized criminal activity. But the children, Amanda pleaded. Think about what this will do to the children. They don't deserve to suffer because their parents made mistakes. I closed my phone and looked directly at my sister, feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. You're absolutely right, Amanda. Your children don't deserve any of this, which is exactly why I've been working with family court services to ensure they're protected when law enforcement arrives. When law enforcement arrives? Derek asked weakly. I glanced at my watch, noting the time with satisfaction. They should be pulling into the driveway right about now, along with representatives from Child Protective Services, the Postal Inspector's office, and a few other interested parties. Through the bay windows, I could see black SUVs and marked police cars surrounding the property. Amanda collapsed into her chair, finally understanding that her elaborate scheme had not only failed, but had triggered consequences far beyond anything she'd imagined. How could you do this to your own sister? She asked through her tears. I thought about my parents sitting on the front porch like homeless strangers, about $18,000 stolen from their retirement funds, about 3 innocent children who'd been used as accessories to federal crimes. How could you do this to your own parents? But even as law enforcement officers approached the front door, I knew the most devastating revelations were still to come. Detective Sarah Chen of the Connecticut State Police led the team through my front door, followed by Agent Martinez from the Postal Inspector's office and 2 representatives from Child Protective Services. Amanda tried to compose herself, but her mascara-streaked face and trembling hands betrayed her desperation. Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson. Detective Chen addressed Amanda and Derek formally. We have warrants for your arrest on multiple charges, including mail fraud, identity theft, organized theft conspiracy, and elder financial abuse. Derek immediately stood with his hands raised. Look, officers, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here. This is a family dispute about property arrangements, not criminal activity. Agent Martinez consulted his tablet, reading from the federal charges. Mr. Thompson, we have documented evidence of you accessing fraudulent bank accounts using Harold and Janet Morrison's personal information, $18,700 in stolen Social Security and pension payments over 6 months. Those are my in-laws, Derek protested. Family members help each other during difficult times. This is just poor communication about financial arrangements. Poor communication doesn't involve forged signatures on federal benefit checks, Agent Martinez replied dryly, or opening bank accounts using stolen identities or intercepting mail from government agencies. Amanda had been silent during the initial exchange, but now she spoke directly to Detective Chen. Officer, my sister is trying to destroy our family because she changed her mind about a generous offer she made months ago. She promised us this house, and now she's using her wealth and connections to have us arrested when we accepted her help. Detective Chen pulled out her own tablet, scrolling through what appeared to be an extensive file. Mrs. Thompson, we're aware of the property dispute, but our investigation extends far beyond this house. Are you familiar with the Henderson family in Vermont? Amanda's face went white, but she maintained her defiant posture. I don't know what you're talking about. July 2018 through March 2019. Detective Chen continued. You and Mr. Thompson convinced elderly farm owners to deed over 43 acres of property by claiming your children needed a stable home due to Mr. Thompson's fake military deployment. Derek tried to interrupt, but Detective Chen continued reading. The Kowalski family in New Hampshire, September 2019 through January 2020. Fraudulent elder care services resulting in theft of prescription medications and $42,000 in retirement savings. And the Garcia family in Massachusetts. Agent Martinez added. February 2020 through August 2021. Identity theft targeting their disabled adult son, fraudulent credit applications, and theft of Social Security disability payments. I watched Amanda's expression cycle through denial, anger, and finally resignation as she realized the full scope of their investigation. How did you find all of that? Professional fraud investigators maintain databases of similar crimes across state lines, Detective Chen explained. Your methods are distinctive enough that connecting the cases wasn't particularly difficult once we knew what to look for. One of the Child Protective Services representatives, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Rodriguez, addressed Amanda directly. Mrs. Thompson, we need to discuss immediate arrangements for your children's safety and welfare. My children are perfectly safe, Amanda said defensively. They're not involved in any adult business matters. Ms. Rodriguez consulted her own notes. We have photographic evidence of your children participating in property crimes, living in unstable housing situations, and being exposed to ongoing criminal activity. The state has a responsibility to ensure their protection. Derek's composure finally cracked completely. You can't take our kids. They haven't done anything wrong. The children aren't being punished, Ms. Rodriguez explained patiently. But they can't remain in your custody while you're facing federal charges and potential incarceration. We've contacted Derek's mother, Patricia Thompson, and she's willing to provide temporary care while these matters are resolved. Amanda whirled around to face me, fury blazing in her eyes. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy my family completely? To prove you're better than everyone else? Before I could respond, Detective Chen stepped between us. Mrs. Thompson, your sister didn't create this situation. Your choices over the past several years led to these consequences. Agent Martinez was coordinating with his team, outside, and through the windows I could see additional law enforcement vehicles arriving. We'll need to process this scene for evidence, but the main arrests can happen now. As they prepared to read Amanda and Derek their rights, my parents appeared in the doorway with another police officer. Mom looked exhausted but relieved while Dad's expression was a mixture of anger and profound sadness. Cocoa honey, Mom said softly. Officer Williams explained some of what's been happening. Is it true about the stolen money from our accounts? I nodded, feeling my throat tighten with emotion. Marcus found evidence going back 6 months, Mom. Amanda was intercepting your mail and forging signatures on your retirement checks. Dad's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment I thought he might try to physically confront Derek. $18,000 from our pension fund. That money was supposed to last us through next winter. We'll get every penny back, I promised him. Marcus traced the money through multiple accounts, and the federal recovery process is already beginning. Amanda was sobbing now as Detective Chen placed handcuffs on her wrists. Dad, please understand, I was trying to protect my children. Derek was going to prison and we were going to lose everything. I never meant for you and Mom to get hurt. Harold looked at his younger daughter with an expression of profound disappointment. You stole our retirement money while pretending to care about our well-being. You manipulated us into believing Coco was selfish and ungrateful, while she was working 2 jobs to save money for our anniversary gift. I was protecting my family, Amanda repeated desperately. By destroying ours, Dad asked quietly. Derek was also handcuffed now, and Agent Martinez was reading him his rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Wait, Derek interrupted. I want to make a deal. I have information about other families Amanda targeted, other crimes she planned. I'll cooperate fully if you'll consider reduced charges. Amanda's head snapped around, staring at Derek with pure betrayal. You bastard. After everything I did to protect you, you're going to throw me under the bus. You got us into this mess with your schemes, Derek shot back. I told you we should have just asked Coco for help honestly, but you insisted on this elaborate con game. Now our kids are being taken away because you couldn't stop lying and stealing. Detective Chen looked interested in Derek's offer. Mr. Thompson, any cooperation will be handled through proper legal channels with your attorney present. Right now, we need to focus on processing these arrests and securing the scene. As they prepared to transport Amanda and Derek to jail, Amanda made one final appeal to our parents. "Mom, Dad, please don't let them take my children. They need their family, not strangers." Janet wiped tears from her eyes before responding. "Honey, you made your choices. Those beautiful babies deserve better than parents who lie and steal and manipulate people who love them." "Patricia is a good woman," Harold added. "She'll take proper care of the children while you and Derek figure out how to fix the mess you've made." Amanda's sobs intensified as the reality of her situation finally sank in completely. The elaborate scheme that was supposed to protect her family had instead destroyed it entirely. Her children would be raised by someone else. Her marriage was in ruins, and her relationship with her parents and sister was permanently damaged. "This isn't over," she said to me as Detective Chen guided her toward the door. "I'll find a way to prove you orchestrated this whole thing to make yourself look like the hero." I watched my sister being loaded into a police car, feeling a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but at a tremendous cost to everyone involved. "Actually," I called out as they prepared to drive away, "there's one more thing you should know about my investigation." Amanda looked up from the back seat, hope flickering in her eyes. "Marcus found evidence that you and Derek aren't just career criminals targeting random families. You're part of a larger network of fraud specialists who share information and coordinate schemes across multiple states." The hope in Amanda's eyes died as she realized the scope of the charges she'd be facing. This wasn't just a family dispute that had gotten out of hand. This was organized criminal enterprise with federal implications. As the police cars pulled away, I turned to face my parents and the aftermath of Amanda's betrayal. The house was still filled with evidence of the crimes committed within its walls, but for the first time in months, it finally felt like it might become the peaceful retirement home I'd originally envisioned. 2 weeks later, I stood in the kitchen of the seaside mansion watching Mom arrange fresh flowers in a crystal vase, while Dad installed new locks on all the doors. The damage from Amanda's occupation had been repaired, the stolen furniture recovered, and the house was finally ready to serve its original purpose. Detective Chen had called that morning with updates on the arrests and charges. "Amanda and Derek are both cooperating now," she'd explained. "Facing federal charges tends to motivate honesty about criminal networks." The investigation had expanded dramatically once Derek began providing information about other fraud operations. Amanda and Derek weren't just career criminals. They were part of a sophisticated network that specialized in targeting families during emotional vulnerabilities like milestone celebrations, medical emergencies, or recent deaths. "How many other families were involved?" I'd asked. "At least 12 confirmed cases across 6 states," Detective Chen had replied. "With potentially more victims we haven't identified yet. Your decision to hire a private investigator and document everything probably prevented dozens of additional crimes." Agent Martinez had also called with good news about financial recovery. The frozen accounts contained nearly $90,000 in stolen money from various victims, including the $18,000 taken from my parents' retirement funds. "Federal asset forfeiture laws allow us to return stolen money to victims fairly quickly," he'd explained. "Your parents should receive full restitution within 30 days. But the most significant development had been the arrest of 3 other members of Amanda and Derek's criminal network. "Your sister kept detailed records of their operations," Detective Chen had told me. "Phone numbers, addresses, bank account information, even notes about which types of families made the best targets." The arrest warrants had been executed simultaneously across 3 states, with federal agents taking down what prosecutors were calling one of the most sophisticated family fraud operations in recent memory. Amanda's cooperation had been essential to identifying the other criminals, but it hadn't protected her from serious charges of her own. "Amanda's looking at 8 to 12 years in federal prison," Detective Chen had concluded. Derek might get 6 to 10 if his cooperation continues to be valuable. The other network members are facing similar sentences. Now, as I watch my parents begin to settle into their dream home, I felt a complex mixture of emotions about Amanda's fate. Justice had been served, but at an enormous cost to our family relationships. Honey. Mom called from the dining room where she was unpacking boxes of family photos. Have you thought about what you want to do with Amanda's children's belongings? During the arrests, Child Protective Services had removed toys, clothes, and personal items belonging to Brandon, Tyler, and Madison. The children were now living with Derek's mother, Patricia, who by all accounts was providing excellent care, while their parents faced federal charges. I was thinking we could pack everything carefully and deliver it to Patricia's house, I suggested. The kids didn't choose any of this, and they shouldn't lose their belongings because of their parents' crimes. Dad nodded approvingly from where he was testing the new security system. Those children are innocent victims in all this. We need to make sure they know their family still loves them, even if their parents made terrible choices. Patricia Thompson had turned out to be a remarkable woman who'd been completely unaware of Derek's criminal activities. She'd immediately stepped forward to care for her grandchildren and had been cooperating fully with Child Protective Services to ensure their stability and emotional support. She's enrolling them in counseling. I'd learned during our phone conversation the previous week. They're confused and scared, but they're starting to understand that their parents' problems weren't their fault. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Dad checked the security monitor and smiled. "It's Marcus," he announced, opening the door to welcome my private investigator. Marcus Fitzgerald looked exactly like what you'd expect from a former FBI agent, tall, gray-haired, and carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd spent decades solving complex cases. "Good afternoon, folks. I have some final updates about the investigation." We gathered around the kitchen island where Marcus spread out folders containing the complete documentation of Amanda and Derek's crimes. "The federal prosecutors are very pleased with the scope of evidence we collected," he began. "This case is going to serve as a model for investigating similar fraud networks." He opened the first folder showing organizational charts mapping out the criminal network. Amanda and Derek were actually mid-level operators in a much larger organization. The ringleaders have been running these family fraud schemes for over a decade, targeting hundreds of victims across the entire eastern seaboard. The scope was staggering. What had started as my suspicion about Amanda's behavior had uncovered a criminal enterprise that had stolen millions of dollars from vulnerable families during their most emotionally challenging moments. "What happens to all the other victims?" Mom asked. "Federal victim assistance programs will help with restitution and counseling services," Marcus explained. "Many of these families thought they were isolated incidents, but now they'll understand they were targeted by professional criminals." He opened another folder containing letters from some of the other victims. "The Henderson family in Vermont wanted me to thank you personally," Marcus said, handing me a handwritten note. "They said your courage in reporting Amanda and Derek gave them hope that justice was still possible." Reading the letter brought tears to my eyes. The elderly farm couple described years of shame and self-doubt after Amanda and Derek had defrauded them, wondering if they'd been foolish to trust people who claimed to be family friends in need. "How did Amanda and Derek find these families?" Dad asked. "Social media research, public records, even monitoring obituaries and anniversary announcements in local newspapers," Marcus replied. "They were very systematic about identifying targets who would be emotionally vulnerable and financially attractive. The methodical nature of their crimes made Amanda's betrayal even more painful. This hadn't been a desperate impulse or a single bad decision. It had been a calculated career choice to prey on families like ours during meaningful moments." "There's one more thing," Marcus said, pulling out a final folder. "Amanda provided information about several planned operations that we were able to prevent, including one that was scheduled to target a family celebrating their son's military homecoming next month. The knowledge that our investigation had prevented additional crimes provided some comfort, but it didn't erase the damage Amanda had done to our own family. Trust had been shattered in ways that might never fully heal. Have you decided whether you want to maintain contact with Amanda during her incarceration? Marcus asked gently. It was a question I'd been avoiding, but one that would need to be answered soon. Amanda was my sister, despite everything she'd done, and she was also the mother of 3 children who would need family support during the coming years. I think we need time, I said finally. Time to process what happened, time for Amanda to demonstrate genuine remorse and change, and time for our parents to heal from the financial and emotional abuse. Dad nodded thoughtfully. She'll always be our daughter and your sister, but trust has to be earned back through actions, not just words. The children will need family connections as they grow up, Mom added, but those relationships have to be healthy ones built on honesty and genuine care. Marcus packed up his folders and prepared to leave. You folks handled an incredibly difficult situation with remarkable grace, he said. The evidence you gathered and the courage you showed in pursuing justice has protected countless other families from similar crimes. After Marcus left, we spent the afternoon continuing to settle my parents into their new home. The original anniversary celebration had been delayed by 2 weeks due to the arrests and investigation, but we were planning a proper party for the following weekend. It won't be the same without Amanda, Mom said sadly as we arranged furniture in the living room. No, I agreed. But maybe it can be the beginning of building something better, something based on honesty and genuine love instead of manipulation and lies. Dad was installing family photos on the mantelpiece, carefully arranging pictures that spanned 50 years of marriage. You know what I keep thinking about, he said. All those visits when Amanda seemed so caring and interested in our lives. Now I wonder if she was just gathering information for her schemes. It was a painful realization that would probably haunt my parents for years. The daughter they'd trusted completely had been systematically exploiting their love and vulnerability while pretending to care about their well-being. But look what you raised in Coco, Mom said, putting her arm around my shoulders. A daughter who worked 2 jobs to save money for a gift she didn't have to give, who hired investigators to protect us when she suspected something was wrong, and who had the courage to see justice done even when it meant destroying her own sister. As the sun set over Long Island Sound, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, I watched my parents begin to enjoy the retirement they'd earned through decades of hard work and sacrifice. The house was finally serving its intended purpose, providing them with security, beauty, and peace during their golden years. The price of that peace had been higher than I'd ever imagined, but justice had been served, and our family could begin the difficult process of healing from Amanda's betrayal. 6 months later, I sat on the wraparound deck of the seaside mansion watching Dad fish from the private dock while Mom tended her new garden. The house had become everything I'd hoped it would be, a sanctuary where my parents could enjoy their retirement, surrounded by beauty and tranquility. Amanda had been sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, while Derek received 8 years after his cooperation helped convict the other members of their fraud network. The children were thriving under Patricia's care, receiving counseling and educational support while maintaining limited contact with their incarcerated parents. I got a letter from Amanda yesterday. Mom mentioned during our weekly dinner together. She's asking if we'd consider visiting her next month. It was a conversation we'd known would eventually come, but one that still felt complicated and emotionally charged. What did you tell her? That we need more time, Dad replied from his position at the grill. She spent months systematically lying to us and stealing our retirement money. Forgiveness doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen without genuine remorse and change. The federal restitution process had recovered every dollar Amanda and Derek had stolen, plus penalties and interest that actually left my parents in better financial shape than before the crimes occurred. But the emotional damage couldn't be repaid through bank transfers. Patricia brought the children by last weekend, Mom continued. They're doing much better in school, and Tyler is even playing Little League baseball. It's amazing how much they've improved since being removed from that chaotic environment. The children had been the innocent victims in Amanda's schemes, and ensuring their welfare had become a family priority. We'd established education funds for all 3 kids and maintained regular contact to provide stability and family connections during their parents' incarceration. Have they asked about visiting Amanda and Derek? I wondered. The counselor says they're not ready yet, Dad explained. Apparently they're still processing the idea that their parents were lying to them about almost everything. The fake financial struggles, the made-up stories about family members, even basic things like where their money came from. Derek's embezzlement trial had revealed the full scope of his crimes, over $150,000, stolen from multiple employers across 5 years. Amanda's fraud network had generated nearly $2 million in victim losses across 8 states. The children had been living off the proceeds of crime their entire lives without knowing it. I keep thinking about the conversation we had when Amanda first claimed I'd promised them this house, I said. The way she looked me right in the eye and lied without any hesitation. How long had she been practicing that level of deception? Probably longer than we want to know, Mom said sadly. The investigators found evidence of smaller frauds going back to her college years. Fake scholarships, fraudulent student loans, even identity theft targeting her roommates. It was heartbreaking to realize that Amanda's criminal behavior hadn't been triggered by Derek's legal troubles or financial desperation. She'd been a career con artist long before she became a wife and mother, which meant our family had been living with a stranger for decades. The hardest part for me, Dad admitted, is wondering if there was ever any genuine love behind her actions. When she visited twice a week and seemed so interested in our lives, was any of that real? I think some of it was, I said carefully. People can love their families while still being willing to exploit them. Amanda's problem wasn't lack of affection. It was the belief that her needs justified whatever actions were necessary to meet them. The distinction was important because it helped explain how Amanda could simultaneously care about our parents while stealing their retirement money. In her mind, she was protecting her children's future, which made the theft not only acceptable, but morally necessary. Do you think she'll actually change during her prison sentence? Mom asked. I hope so, I replied honestly. For the children's sake, if nothing else. But change requires acknowledging responsibility for your actions, and Amanda was still blaming me for orchestrating her arrest as recently as her last court hearing. The federal prosecutors had been clear that Amanda's cooperation with the investigation was motivated by self-interest rather than genuine remorse. She'd provided information about other criminals only after being told it might reduce her sentence, and she'd never expressed real accountability for the pain she'd caused our family. We'll support the children regardless of whether Amanda changes, Dad declared firmly. Those kids deserve family connections and financial security that aren't dependent on their parents' choices. As the evening progressed, extended family members began arriving for our weekly gathering. Cousin Patricia, Aunt Susan, and Uncle Robert had all recovered the money Amanda and Derek had stolen from them, and they'd rallied around our parents with remarkable grace and generosity. The strangest thing, Aunt Susan remarked as we shared dessert on the deck, is realizing how many warning signs we ignored over the years. Amanda always had elaborate explanations for her financial problems, and she was always asking for help while promising to pay everything back. She was very good at making people feel guilty for having more than she did, Uncle Robert added. Even when we knew she and Derek had steady jobs and nice cars, she could make you believe they were constantly on the verge of homelessness. The family conversations about Amanda's manipulation had been therapeutic for everyone involved. We'd all been victims of her schemes to varying degrees, and sharing our experiences helped us understand the sophisticated nature of her deception. I learned something important through all this, I said as we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Generosity doesn't require naivety. You can love your family deeply while still protecting yourself from manipulation and abuse. It was a lesson that had come at enormous cost, but one that would serve our family well in future relationships. Trust should be earned through consistent actions over time, not granted automatically based on family connections or emotional appeals. The other thing I learned, Mom added, is the importance of asking for help when you suspect something is wrong. If Coco hadn't hired that investigator when she became suspicious, Amanda and Derek might still be stealing from us while planning even bigger crimes. The investigation had revealed Amanda's plans to forge documents transferring ownership of our parents' current house to her name, claiming they'd agreed to move into the mansion early due to health concerns. Without intervention, they would have systematically stolen everything our parents owned. Speaking of asking for help, Dad said with a smile, we've been thinking about establishing a foundation to help other families who've been victimized by similar crimes. The idea was inspired by the letters we'd received from other victims of Amanda's fraud network. Many elderly families had lost their life savings to professional criminals and felt too ashamed or confused to seek help from law enforcement. We'd use some of the restitution money and the penalties we received, Mom explained, create a resource center where families could get legal advice, investigative assistance, and emotional support when dealing with financial manipulation by relatives. It was a beautiful way to transform the pain of Amanda's betrayal into something that could protect other families from similar crimes. The foundation would also honor the memory of our family's better values, genuine love, honest communication, and mutual support without exploitation. As the evening concluded and family members prepared to return home, I reflected on the complex journey that had brought us to this point. 6 months ago, I'd been a successful marketing executive, planning a surprise anniversary gift for my parents. Now I was someone who understood the difference between genuine family loyalty and sophisticated manipulation. The seaside mansion had fulfilled its original purpose despite Amanda's attempts to steal it. My parents were enjoying their retirement in comfort and security, surrounded by family members who loved them honestly rather than strategically. The price of that peace had been enormous, but the alternative would have been continued exploitation and escalating crimes. There's one more thing I want to say, I announced as we cleared the dinner table together. I'm grateful Amanda's schemes failed, not just because justice was served, but because her children now have a chance to grow up with honest values and genuine relationships. Brandon, Tyler, and Madison would face challenges as they process their parents' crimes, but they would also benefit from being removed from an environment built on lies and exploitation. Patricia was providing them with stability educational opportunities, and most importantly, examples of how families could support each other without manipulation or hidden agendas. Those children are going to be remarkable adults, Dad predicted confidently. They've survived something that would destroy many kids, and they're learning that honesty and hard work are better foundations for life than lies and theft. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the question I would pose to the families watching this story unfold. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself or other loved ones from manipulation? It's one of the most painful decisions anyone can face, but sometimes justice requires courage, even when the criminal is someone you love. The journey from discovery to resolution had taught me that genuine love sometimes requires enforcing boundaries and consequences, even when those actions cause short-term pain to family relationships. True family loyalty means protecting vulnerable members from exploitation, not enabling criminals simply because they share your DNA. I hope sharing our story encourages other families to trust their instincts when something feels wrong, to seek professional help when dealing with suspected fraud, and to remember that justice serves everyone's long-term interests, even when it disrupts comfortable lives. Thank you for following our family's journey from betrayal to justice to healing. Your comments and engagement mean so much as we continue building relationships based on honesty and genuine care. If you've experienced similar challenges with family manipulation or financial abuse, please like this video to show support for other survivors, subscribe for more stories about overcoming family betrayal, and share this story with anyone who might benefit from understanding these complex dynamics. My parents and I wish you and your family's relationships built on trust, honesty, and mutual respect, rather than manipulation and exploitation. May you never face the challenges we did, but if you do, may you find the courage to choose justice over comfortable lies.